Welcome to The Gap, where it's our mission to bridge the gap between training and on-field performance.
I'm Brett Hart, owner of Hitman Performance.
And I'm Dan Labadia, the owner of Jack Javelin.
Hope you guys enjoy the show.
All right, welcome to this episode of The Gap. We're going to be going over the top 3 mobility exercises for throwers today. So mobility is one of those things where some people put a lot of weight into it. Other people don't put enough weight into it at all. And I think that you just need to find that happy medium for yourself. My personal opinion on it is it's one of those things that's great for a recovery day, great to warm up, obviously, before a session. But you should really be able to dedicate a prolonged period of time earlier on in your athletic development whenever you start taking your sport more serious and just develop a really, really good level of mobility. And then you'll be able to pretty much maintain that for the rest of your athletic career as long as you keep up with it and do some priming movements a little bit each day. I think that a lot of people get caught up into this realm of mobility where they're just doing an hour of mobility a day and then that's their training. And then like we've talked about, they lack that explosive power and the athleticism that comes with actually being able to use the mobility. And so I think it's great to lay that foundation and to do it. And then once you're able to do it, you got to find your next weakest link and attack that. So starting number 1, your favorite is Cobra. So walk us through that one, because that's one that I actually don't do that one that often. So
For me, the hanging Cobra is you set the barbell up at around face height or a little bit below, around chin height. And the regular Cobra stretch, what people know from yoga, is your hips are on the ground, you press all the way up, and it's pretty much a lumbar extension where you're trying to get your hips into the ground. You should feel a little bit of a quad stretch too, depending how tight your hip flexors are. And you're getting all the way up, trying to get your chest as high as you can. So with the hanging portion of it too, is you're kind of getting 2 birds with 1 stone action, where you're getting that passive stretch up top through the lats and everything in the shoulder. And you're also getting that lumbar extension, and it feels really good depending on how stiff you are. The stiffer you are, the more of these drills are going to feel terrible.
Yeah.
Just for a little bit of guideline for people, that you have to work with what you got and go slow and build into it. Don't watch stuff that you do or Medicine Through Movement or those other mobility guys out there.
You call me advanced?
just in 3 things. But it's like, don't look at those crazy mobility drills and think you can do that day one. My mistake. I was trying to do a back bridge right off the bat. It felt awful just because you're not.
I got a funny story about that stuff.
Yeah, but as you're building up to it, that regular Cobra stretch is phenomenal. And I also really like the side lying one where you're holding and it's just a side hang. And it is the most intense lat stretch you can possibly get. And throwers, as you know, are really tight in their lats. And when they throw, it's one of the main decelerators of the throw, and it also helps with acceleration, that if they don't work on their lats, they're going to get extremely tight in that area, and it's going to get them really restricted, and that's where they start getting that pushy feel, and they start getting that pain in the front of the shoulder, and that's where they're going to see the limited mobility and the restrictions of that. So the sideline Cobra is honestly my favorite, and if I had to pick between the 2. And I've taken multiple pictures through it where they're like, my lat's tight. They grab like the lightest band and they do like a little bit of stretching, or like the side rack one, which are good. You get the sensation, but nothing like that sideline one. And another 2 bird 1 stone is that you're also challenging your grip strength a lot as well. So hangs are great. I made a post about that before. It's one of those human first movements that help aid in building the base of athletic capabilities. So the side one is just overall my favorite for anyone that has to throw overhead.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where the strength through length component, essentially that's what you're doing with a hang, is you're using gravity and your body weight to expand your current range of motion. So when you're doing a hamstring stretch, you're standing up, you stretch, and then that's pretty much it. Or you're doing a quad pull, you pull your quad, you're holding it, you're standing up, and that's pretty much it. When you're doing a strength through length movement like the Cobra, hanging Cobra, I should say, you are holding on to the bar. Your feet are planted on the ground, sort of, and then your body weight is just hanging into the lat. And so now that causes you to use that body weight and the gravity to pull you into a deeper range of motion that you didn't have previously. And that's where all that strength through length stuff comes into play, because you're essentially just using dumbbells, barbells, resistance bands, cables, even. You're using your body weight, hanging, gravity. You're using those things to expand your current range of motion. That's why like my strength through length program has it's 4 phases of 3 weeks, and every phase just gets progressively harder. So it starts with 3 weeks of pretty much just static mobility. You got 90-90, you got pigeon, you got couch stretch, you got just cat cow, T-spine, reach through, all the basics. And then you start progressing it to being able to, use dumbbells and use resistance bands and use barbells in a reverse pullover type of movement to help you progress your mobility, even with the thrower stretch, which we'll get to later in today's episode. But you got kneeling to start, and then we got the T position where we're just working on moving up and down. Then you got rotations where you're just rotating, tapping your heel, rotating, tapping your heel, and then holding it at the end. So I think a lot of people neglect that progressive overload in terms of mobility. And I think that's a very extremely important part that a lot of people don't really do. Like you said, they'll grab their light band and they'll do their basic 5-10 stretches, and then they don't know how to progress that. And so that's where the strength through length stuff is super, super important. And like you said, when you're working on accelerating all the time, you're doing a lot of bench press, you're working on throwing plyo balls, you're doing overweight plyo balls, figure eight plyo balls with the lighter balls, and just working on your arm speed all the time. You need to be able to decelerate. Otherwise, you're going to get hurt, because like we talked about in the last episode where we talked about plyometrics for sprinting, a lot of those implications that come with injuries are happening on the deceleration portion of your movement, right? And so with track and field and sprinting and throwing, you're going as fast and as powerful as possible. So your body needs to be able to not only perform at max intent, accelerating forward, but you need to be able to slow yourself down and brace for impact, because, the throw in terms of javelin, I mean, in baseball too, but in terms of javelin, the throw is a very aggressive movement, not only on your block leg and your back, but your elbow and your shoulder and everything as well. So the better your deceleration capabilities are, the better. Going into the next one, I have 2 that I want to talk about, and they're pretty, I would say, advanced, but I actually found that for myself, I don't know if it's because of my height or I was just naturally gifted in having pretty good spinal segmentation, but anything for me that was like very bilateral stance that had to do with spinal segmentation, I was just really good at, like, all automatically. So my back bridge and reverse Nordic curl were never really something that challenged me. To that point, a lot of people will do in the weight room, they stick to what?
They stick to what they're usually good at.
Yeah, they stick to what they're usually good at.
Yeah.
So for me, I would throw the sissy squat in this one as well. But anything that was in that bilateral stance, like the reverse Nordic curl or the back bridge or the sissy squat, I would be really good at them, and people would see me do them and they would look really impressive. So I just kept doing more and more and more and more of it. And I neglected a lot of those, single arm hanging movements, a lot of the unilateral stuff that was really important for throwing that would get your hips a little bit more. But nonetheless, for people that aren't super already naturally gifted in that area, the back bridge and reverse Nordic curl are going to be really helpful for you in terms of having that T-spine segmentation, right? And so what happens is when you're in the throw, when we look at the reverse C position or the power position, your chest and your center of mass is going to be behind your block leg, and your back leg is going to be bent behind you, creating that backwards C. And that's where you get your power from, is that back leg being bent and that front leg being straight, because that's how you use the kinetic chain effectively. With that being said, in order to get your chest to the sky, you also need to be able to have really good thoracic mobility in your scaps and in your upper back. And so whenever you see that pitcher almost having that backward C position where their chest is proud, or the javelin thrower that has their armpit fully exposed to the sky and their arm is all the way back, that comes from the back bridge and the reverse Nordic curl and being able to do those spinal segmented mobility exercises. A lot of times people look at layback and they think it's just chest and lats and shoulder. And that's not really the case, because if you've ever tried to do like a dumbbell external rotation with your throwing arm, you could do it with just your shoulder, but then if you retract your scaps and bring your chest forward in that proud chest movement, it's a lot easier to get that external rotation. And then that's causing you to engage your chest forward, but keep your arm back at the same time. And so having that ability to segment your spine and also be able to kill multiple birds with one stone, like you talked about earlier, like with the back bridge, especially if you're doing back bridge push-ups, you're not only stretching out your forearms, but you're working on the spinal segmentation, the T-spine. You're working on your shoulder mobility. You're working on your hip mobility too, because your hips are like all the way extended up. And then same thing with the reverse Nordic curl. When your feet are on the ground, when you lean back and touch your head to the ground, you're really getting a really big stretch in your hip flexors and psoas. And then you're also kind of working your core at the same time as well. So anything for me that I look at, all right, in terms of mobility, especially now that I'm in that phase of being able to maintain mobility, because I did the work of doing 3 months of no lifting and did a bunch of mobility 6 years ago when I first had Tommy John surgery. I did that work, and now I'm in that maintenance mode where I want to spend a little bit more time actually lifting and running and jumping and throwing, but I still do mobility a little bit every day, but mostly, I'll do like 1 day a week of, make maybe a 30 minutes to really push it. But now that I'm in that maintenance mode, I'm trying to use like back bridge, reverse Nordic curl, thrower stretch, all those movements that are going to kill multiple birds with one stone. So I don't have to spend an hour doing mobility, but I'm able to hit the hips, the shoulders, the spine, the core, the ankles, the wrist, the forearm all at once. And then also with the strength through length component, you're getting stronger in the end ranges of motion. And when you use that weight, you also help yourself warm up a little bit quicker too, versus just doing like a band swing with a resistance band or something, or shoulder cars with no weight. It's like if you do a shoulder car with a dumbbell, you're going to warm up a little bit quicker, as long as you have the capability of doing that pretty cold.
Something that you were talking about with the spinal segmentation made me think about, you're familiar with the spinal engine theory?
Yeah.
So how the spine, with those who aren't familiar with it, it's pretty much a school of thought thinking that the spine is responsible for all human movement. So in order for you to throw or to sprint or to move, like your spine is going to be in control of your limbs. All right. So there's the video of the quadruple amputee running, where you see rotation, lateral flexion, you see the spine moving in different areas for the person to move forward. He's not focused on what his hips are doing or his knees are doing, because they're not there. You're seeing what the spine has to do to move you forward. And so when we talk about the spinal segmentation, this mobility, it's important to train like that, because if you have a stiff, compressed spine from years of deadlifting, back squatting, a lot of these compressive movements that you see in the weight room, not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just in order to be more of a expressive athlete, you need to have a mobile and segmental spine. Like you need your spine to be able to move in order to have those athletic capabilities on the field or down the runway or throwing off the mound. And I think that's what people don't realize with the mobility piece, is they think they're just stretching the muscles and everything, but you're trying to get active range of motion in the movements that you want to see translate on the field.
Yeah. Didn't you make a post a couple of years ago about how sprinting is a rotational movement?
I did, and I got that from Just Fly. I posted that. I should repost that, because that was 100,000 followers ago. But Just Fly, Joel Smith, fantastic sprint coach, and he's all about the rotation that you see within sprinting, of hip internal rotation and external rotation, going in and out rapid. It's not so much straight line linear like a sagittal plane, where it looks sagittal because you're running in a straight line. But when you look at elite sprinters head on, you see these rotations and these body contortions, and it's a lot of transverse plane dominant forces working back and forth so fast that you're moving forward. And a lot of people try to do everything anti-rotation or anti-movement, like the Pallof hold or the dead bug or like a plank, like anything of anti-extension, anti-flexion, anti-rotation, like everything resisting movement, which there's a time and a place for doing that. But when you look at actual high-level athletes performing the movement that you want to get better at, there's no anti anything. That thing is rotating fast. It is extremely fast. It is flexing extremely fast. It is looking at pitchers that throw very high velocities, they get into pretty deep extension in their low back and in their thoracic spine. And so if you look at a javelin thrower still image, their back is bent all the way forward. Like that is not a dead bug position where it's a neutral core and your abs are tight. Like, no, dude, you were opening it up and you are trying to throw it as hard as you can. No little red band is going to prepare you for throwing a javelin 80 meters if you're trying to do a pal off hold with it. Like, not saying anything's wrong with the exercise. It's just the application that a lot of coaches use it for. I think they're a little misconstrued, saying like this is going to prevent back pain. It's like, well, if your spine can't move, it's going to be locked up and it's going to be stiff. That's what's going to cause pain. And if it's not strong in those different areas of motion that you're going to find on the field or in the weight room or wherever, you're going to have pain. It's stuff that's going to be in there like the QL or just some type of oblique or anything in there that is going to be stiff just because it hasn't been worked.
Yeah, and that's where, too, what we talk about with going through the javelin throw when you're going in the crossovers, you're turned off, like, so you're closed off, but you're also going opposite arm, opposite leg in the same way that you would in a sprint. So yeah, your throwing arm is back, but when your right leg comes forward, your left arm is across your body. And then when your left leg goes forward, your left arm is out in front of you. So your lead arm is going back and forth in sync with your legs. And that's this idea of, all right, you're closed off, then you're open, you're closed off, then you're open, you're closed off, then you're open. And then when you hit the penultimate and you're skipping sideways, you're going to be closed off through the penultimate, and then on back foot contact, you're going to slowly open up. And then when you throw, you're going to be fully open up facing forward. And so that's the ability too, where that whole movement is derived from rotating the hips and the pelvis. And then eventually, once the feet are planted facing forward and your chest is closed off, that's where the kinetic chain comes into play, and your upper body is going to rotate forward and you throw forward. And so that's where next, our last movement that is really helpful for throwers is the thrower stretch. The reason why that one is so helpful is because, again, you're killing two birds with one stone, and you're essentially working on having your hips forward, but rotating your spine around. So you're really just developing that ability to have that hip shoulder separation and developing, like we talk about with isometrics, like you want to be able to build up a long duration in that position and be able to hold it for a very long time so that when you are sprinting and doing other athletic type movements, you're able to find that position a lot more comfortably. Because if you never spend time in that position and then you're going out and throwing and you're doing it at full effort, it's going to be a lot harder for your body to find that position if you've never trained it before. And yes, we talk about unilateral mobility and plyometrics and strength. You could do a reverse lunge, which is awesome. You could do a, split squat jump, a split squat depth drop. Those are awesome to get that unilateral position. But the thing about the thrower stretch is you're able to hold it. So then instead of you doing a split second of a plyometric, you're holding it for 10 to 30 seconds. So then it's so much more volume in terms of how much time you're spending in that position. And you're also getting the rotation of the spine involved, which is really, really important because you're not getting that with other unilateral movements. And like I talked about earlier, being really good at the sissy squat, the back bridge, the reverse Nordic curl, that's awesome, but that's all bilateral stance. And you eventually want to get really good at unilateral stance mobility exercises because that's what is going to be more similar to the throw. And the other great thing about the thrower stretch as well is you're essentially just practicing being in that throwers or that power position. So your block leg is going to be straight out in front of you. Your center of mass and your chest is going to be behind the block. Your back leg is going to be super soft and bent, just like you would when you hit that, that squatty back foot internal rotation with the back leg. And then you're getting that spinal rotation of rotating around the other way. So you're really just killing every bird with every stone, with one stone.
Every bird's getting smoked right now.
Yeah. So that's where I see just so much value in the thrower stretch. And, you look at kids that that hit their block and swing around, or they can't hit a block at all, or they hit the block and they're super, super narrow. It's like, all right, getting your left leg out to the side a little bit and then practicing holding in that position is a lot easier than telling them, all right, now on this next full approach, go out and try to stick your leg out a little bit to the left. It's like, no, start with a thrower stretch, get your left leg out a little bit to the left. So you're almost like you would have a straight line underneath your center of mass. Your right leg, if you're a right-handed thrower, your right leg would be on the right side of the line, your left leg would be on the left side of the line. Your center of mass is stacked evenly on the line, and then you rotate around and you're just balanced there in that position, because that's what's going to be the best for the throwing position. Is you want to simulate how you're doing the sport in the ability to train it, and that's how you're going to be able to find that position a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. Like that's a very specific mobility drill that you can see. Like a lot of people like to look at drills that look very specific to the activity that you want to do, and it's not always the best thing to do. But with this one, it is a very specific movement to throwing, and like, it is an isometric hold where you have to focus on where you're at in space and to start real slow and holding that position, because if you're weak in that and you can't do it, how do you expect to throw at max intensity running down the runway or throwing 100% with a guy in the box? Like it kind of reminds me of like Bruce Lee type stuff, like martial artists where they'll hold static positions for hours, or they'll do the same punch over and over again. It's like you're practicing the same thing over and over and over again to actually get that mental confidence. Like your body doesn't want to, like if you just wake up, your body's not going to want to throw a javelin 80 meters. Like you have to train it to do that. So in order to do that, you don't just start by chucking javelins right off the bat. It's like sprinting. You don't just start sprinting 100 meters every single day and expect to be Usain Bolt. Like there's a huge baseline level of fitness that comes into play. And one of the best ways to start doing that is isometric holds in that position that you need to be strong in order for it to translate later down the road.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast too, is to bridge the gap between training and how it affects your performance on the field. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in.
And if you enjoyed it, please leave a 5-star rating and review and share the show, because the only way that this show grows is if you like it, share it, and tell your friends and family about it.
New episode every Monday.